Welcome to the laws of cooking on Shabbat. This will be part 9 of the class. Today's topic is going to be adding water into a food on Shabbat or into a hot urn on Shabbat. Now it happens a lot of times that a person sees that there's not enough water inside the food. So what do? They go ahead and they take more water, they put it inside the food in order for it to allow to go ahead and cook better, and not only that, and the food shouldn't burn. Or they look into the urn, they ask one of the children to make sure that the urn is full, but the child went and he only did it halfway. But the parents are anticipating more guests, and half of the urn is not going to be enough. So what do? They go and they add more water. Now, are you allowed to go ahead and add water into a cooked dish on Shabbat? Or into a hot urn on Shabbat? Are you allowed to go ahead and add water? That we're not going to allow you to do. The question what we want to discuss today, what happens if somebody went ahead and he did it? He went ahead and he took water and he put it into the cooked dish, or he took water and he put it into the hot urn. Are you allowed to consume that food on Shabbat? Or are you allowed to drink that hot water on Shabbat? So Rav Yosef Shlita addresses this issue in Halacha Berura, and he begins like this. Im hosifu b'Shabbat mayim l'toch hatavshil, if they added on Shabbat water into the cooked dish, or l'toch mecham shel mayim chamim, or into an urn of hot water, Rav David Yosef says, Yesh lahakel, one is allowed to be lenient, le'echol et oto tavshel, and consume that food, or l'shtot et otam mayim b'Shabbat, or to drink the liquid, meaning the waters, on Shabbat. One is allowed to go ahead and he's allowed to do it, meaning you're allowed to have the food and you're allowed to drink the water. But Rav David Yosef does make a rule to tell us when is this allowed. He says, Kol sheyesh betavshel, as long as you add in the cooked dish, or b'mayim, or as long as you add in the hot urn water, shayu kodem lechem, that was there prior to you adding more water now, rov keneged mashe osivu letocho, you had majority against what did they added into it right now. So, Rabotai, what's considered to be majority? Majority literally is 50.1%. Okay, let's just put it 51%. Okay, that's the majority. 51% is majority, 49% is minority. Now, when it comes to food, let's say a woman had a cooked dish, she had a pot of food. Let's say it was rice, right? Baksh, I don't know, chulin, I don't know. Now, she goes ahead and she takes a cup of water and she spills it into the chulun. Now, for sure, you had the rov, you had majority against this water. So over there, it's not going to be really a problem. Where's the problem going to happen is by the hot urn. Why? A lot of times you tell a child to please fill up the urn. Again, children, they don't make that calculation, how much you're going to drink on Shabbat, who's coming, who's not coming. They're not supposed to know it. How are they supposed to know all these calculations? So the mother tells the child, please fill up the urn till the top. The child does it halfway. Now on Shabbat, they have guests, cake, desserts, people want to drink hot water. What are we going to do? It's going to be embarrassing. Again, you're not allowed to do it, but the mother, out of embarrassment, told the child, why didn't you do it? Now the child feels bad. So what does he do? How is he supposed to know the halakha? He goes, now he starts pouring into the urn water. Now the question is, can you at all benefit from that water? Up to now, at least, we would have half water. Now we have no water because he went and he added more water. Or are we going to tell you, no, there's also that rule of 51%. So over there is going to be a little bit of a difficulty to determine. That if what I went and I poured in on Shabbat is less than what was there prior to Shabbat, then we're going to tell you allowed to go ahead and consume that water also. You're allowed to drink it. As long as you had in the urn 51% of water, and now you went ahead and you added 49% of water, which you were not allowed to do. Nevertheless, we're going to tell you are allowed to go ahead and drink that water. This is what Rav David Yosef Shlitai is telling us over here. Yesh la'akel le'echol oto tavshil. One is allowed to be lenient and consume that food, or l'shtot or et otam mayim b'Shabbat, or to drink that water on Shabbat, when kol sheyesh b'tavshil or b'mayim, as long as you have in the cooked dish or in the water, shayu kodem lechem, that were there prior to this whole situation of you pouring new waters, rov keneged masha usivu letocho, as long as you had over there majority against what you added into it now. So therefore, if you had a majority in the food or in the urn against what you are pouring the new waters, now we're going to tell you you're allowed to go ahead and be lenient. Continues Rav David. V'yesh la'akel b'zeh afilu kishenasa hadavar b'meized. One is allowed to go ahead and be lenient even if this thing that was done on Shabbat was done knowingly. Now, Rabotai, again, it is asur to do it. You're not allowed to do it. But if you went ahead and you did it, we're going to tell you you're allowed to go ahead and consume that liquid or that food as long as you had 51% prior to pouring water inside. So the one that did it b'mezid, the one that went ahead and he knowingly knows that it's asur and they did it, are they still allowed to consume that food? Meaning the person himself, is he allowed to consume that food? Comes Rav David Yosef Shtutani says, Vafilu le'oto she'asaken. Even to that one that went ahead and he poured the water into the food or into the hot urn on Shabbat, even that person is allowed to go ahead and enjoy that food and that water. We're not going to tell him it becomes forbidden on him until after Shabbat. Nevertheless, continues Rav David, and he says, Umikom makom, and nevertheless, im below sovat hamayim lo'oto tavshil haya tavshil magdiach. What happens if without that extra water that you poured on Shabbat into that cooked dish, if without pouring that extra water into the cooked dish, the tavshil, the cooked dish, would burn, verak machmat tosavat otam mayim lo higdicha tavshil, and the only reason why the food didn't get burnt is only because of the waters that you poured on Shabbat, the extra waters. Asur lechlo b'Shabbat, that we're not going to tell you allowed to eat. Over there we're going to tell you that it is forbidden for you to consume it. So Rabotai, so there are a few steps that we have to understand. Lechatchila, initially one is never allowed to pour water into a cooked dish on Shabbat, which is on an open fire, or to put water into a hot urn on Shabbat. Why? Because you're going to cook the water by the food and you're going to cook the water inside the urn. Now what happens if it did happen? We're going to tell you the cooked dish and the water is permissible for consumption. The only thing is we have to know, in the food it's a little bit easier. 51% you had, no problem. By the urn it's a little bit more problematic because now you have to make that calculation to make sure you had 51%, because if you don't have 51%, then you're not even allowed to go ahead and drink the hot water on Shabbat. Nevertheless, we did mention that if a person went ahead and he did it where he was not supposed to do it knowingly, we're going to tell you even that person is allowed to go ahead and benefit from the food and the hot water. However, Rav David Yosef did conclude and say, if without me adding the extra water into that cooked dish on Shabbat, that food would burn, and it's only because of my extra water that I placed into the food, that's why the food did not burn, asur lechlo b'Shabbat. You're not allowed to eat that food on Shabbat. Okay, Rabotai, let's do a small review. If on Shabbat someone adds water into food or into a kettle of hot water, the food or water is still allowed to eat or drink as long as most of what is inside was already there from before Shabbat, meaning the added water is the minority. This rule applies even if the person did it on purpose, and even the one who did it is allowed to eat it. But if the food would have burned or dried out without adding that water, and only because of adding the water it stayed good, then it is not allowed to eat it on Shabbat. Okay, Rabotai, this is very simple. So basically we see over here, adding water into food or into an urn on Shabbat is not allowed. If you went ahead and you did add the water into the cooked food or into the urn on Shabbat, we're going to tell you it's allowed. When? As long as you had 51% of food or 51% of water before putting more water into it on Shabbat. Nevertheless, the one who did it knowingly, on purpose, still we're going to tell him he's allowed to go ahead and consume that food. However, if without the water that is being placed into the cooked dish on Shabbat, what's going to get burnt? And now, because you placed the water, it saved the food from getting burnt, then we're going to tell you the food becomes forbidden for consumption. Rabotai, have a great day. Baruch Adonai L'olam. Amen ve'amen.